can't get better than that. Yeah, we all do better when we all do better. You can't get better than that. I said we all do better when we all do better. You can't get better than that. Yeah, we all do better when we all do better. You can't get better than that. We all do better when we all do better. We can't get better than that. Say we all do better when we all do better. We can't get better than that. Come on. I said we all do better when we all do better. We can't get better than that. We all do better when we all do better. We can't get better than that. We all do better when we all do better. We can't get better than that.
And that ain't no crime.
We're about to go live. So please give us a big Santa Monica welcome to Gangstagrass. All the way live.
Baby, all the way live, baby.
Is it live?
Get up on your far side,
Is it live?
baby.
Is it live?
You guys are lunatics.
Welcome to
thank
the
you,
Gangstagrass live
Rusty.
stream.
That was Rusty subscribing, and so right away we're picking up some Twitch subscribers. Everybody on Twitch is catching the best way to experience this. You can throw some emojis across the screen of our live stream in the Twitch chat. So gangstagrass.tv is the place to be. Let's throw some emojis across here. There's a bunch of me and some Dolio and some Bob Ross. Fun.
The Bob Ross thing is just still so hilarious to me.
There you go.
What thing?
No, the Bob Ross little emoticon there.
The what?
Yeah. And Luna is tuning in from Luray, Virginia.
Hey. Sweet. I know who that is.
That is impressive without opposable thumbs.
Yeah.
And that's not a slight. Luna is a dog.
And we got Kate Clay tuning in on Facebook. She's asking a very important question. Why don't you come to Wales when you visit the UK?
That's a great
And the
question.
funny thing is, the driver that we have bringing us around the UK the last couple of tours is Welsh.
You mean our transporter?
Yes, our agent of transportation.
Yeah, he's probably like a previous member of Welsh Secret Service or whatever they.
Without question.
But no, it's fun. We haven't been to Wales, but what we do when we come up the west side of England, when we get like close to Liverpool, he would like tune the radio in to catch like the Welsh stations. And I swear, man, that is the most nonsensical sounding language.
What?
SNL made fun of that. And SNL was making fun of James McAvoy's Scottish accent, and then the punchline was like a Welsh accent was even more unintelligible.
Bro.
Wild. But anyway, no, it would be great.
They was speaking Hobbit, bro. I was like, huh?
That's
Yeah, I don't know.
nah.
We should probably talk to our UK booker and see if we could put that together. I want to go to Wales.
Yeah.
I mean, we went to all the W states, so I guess it's time to go to all the W countries now. What else we got? We got Wales.
Slovakia.
Wakanda.
Wakanda. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, technically, we've already been to Wakanda.
Point.
Atlanta.
Point.
Yes.
Point.
You see.
I
I will take you to mine. I am to Chad, and I will take you to Kansas. Kansas.
Chad. To Chad.
All right.
Wait, what other countries start with W?
Let me think.
With what?
W.
Countries that start with W. Help us out in the chat.
West Timor.
West Timor is part of Indonesia.
Yeah. Okay.
For now.
West Papua?
mm,
Just stay in the same region.
If you're asking Chekhov, Venezuela and Vietnam and
That's right.
Yo, apparently there are no countries that start with W.
there are no countries that start with W. I'm trying to scouring the map in my brain. I'm
West
like,
Germany used to be a country.
used
Are
to
we
be a
gonna
thing.
sing the Animaniacs country song or something?
Yeah, right.
Oh.
Get to the W section.
Bitch, there are no W countries. Huh.
Sleeves is doing it right now.
Yeah, right. She's doing it right now. I love it. Yo, I
Throw her off. I'm sailing away.
Poland, Romania, Scotland, Albania, Ireland, Russia, Oman, Bulgaria, Saudi Arabia, Hungary, Cyprus, Iraq, and Iran. That's where I am in the song. You cannot throw me off.
It's not alphabetical.
No.
Yo, I don't know. I don't know if there are any.
No, I'm looking at the list. There are no W's.
Speaking of
Tommy
countries.
started doing it in the Twitch chat. Tommy P is already on the India, Pakistan, Burma, Afghanistan.
Guinea-Bissau, Madagascar, Juan Mayor, Cayman, Hong Kong, Abu Dhabi, Yugoslavia, Crete, Mauritania, then Transylvania, Monaco, Liechtenstein, Malta, and Palestine, Fiji, Australia, Sudan. There are none in the song. That's crazy.
So-
Yeah, there are no
So-
W's.
That is crazy. I
You know,
did not know
what
that.
movie? You know what movie I just watched the other day? Terminal. Did anybody ever actually watch that movie?
That's the
I
one
did.
with Tom Hanks
With
is
Tom Hanks,
got
yeah.
stuck in the airport with no country.
Yeah, because he was from the fictional country. It's not myth of like dragons. The country of Krakosia. And when like in between, like during his flight, Krakosia has a coup and like doesn't exist anymore and isn't recognized, so he can't leave the terminal and he can't go into the States and he can't go home, so he just lives there.
Yeah.
Also,
Yeah, how long
like,
was he there?
and like Stanley Tucci is like an improbable antagonist. So he's there for like, I think he's there for like maybe months because he like the issue, like at one point he ends up with a job like doing contracting because he just is like bored one night and he's like, this part of the airport, I want to make it into like my home. I want to make it homey for myself. And then the contractors show up in the morning and they're like, you're good. Which team are you with? You're with us now. You work for us now. Which is helpful because Stanley Tucci is trying to starve him out. It's kind of a contrived movie. But,
Well, no, it's actually based on a true story, but they changed a bunch of stuff.
couldn't you say that about anything though? Yeah, it's
Well,
based on a true story, but
yeah,
they changed
yeah.
a bunch of stuff.
Well, no, it's based on a real guy who was expelled for protests against the Shah in Iran. But while he was out of the country, he basically found that he could not return.
Wow. And did he end up in an airport or what?
Yeah. There was a book about it called The Terminal Man.
Huh.
Now we need
Yeah.
Terminal Man and Lawnmower Man as the crossover we didn't know we needed.
Yeah, but they like totally changed everything.
Yeah.
In the third
Also-
movie, they meet the Invisible Man.
Also, speaking of crossover, Zoe Saldana is in a romance subplot with Diego Luna, so Cassian Andor and Gamora of radically different universes
Interesting. Okay. All right.
end up together.
And this was pre-snap.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really have no idea what anything you just said was. Is
Yeah,
Lawnmower
but
Which is
Man...
funny, because you've seen this movie.
Wait, what movie?
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it.
We
Wait,
only
is-
have 2
is-
hours
is
tonight.
Is Lawnmower Man a horror movie?
Yes.
Yeah, pretty much.
I think technically, for some reason, all of those movies seem like comedies to me. I always looked at Lawnmower Man as just a slapstick comedy.
It might be because you understand how computers work. I'm not sure.
Probably.
Yes. I just wanted to vent a little bit about some things I was hearing about today that I thought were really interesting that folks might know about, but to me it's like stuff like, was kind of related to issues I knew about, but it's just like taking me deeper down the rabbit hole.
Mhm.
Go for it.
What I was mentioning to Danjo earlier is a couple studies that came out that showed that there's a very noticeable difference in tree coverage within cities, neighborhood by neighborhood, that follows the neighborhood segregation that happened from redlining, such that the neighborhoods that ended up being white or wealthier neighborhoods from redlining have much more tree coverage and shade than the poor neighborhoods, which included one stat that in LA, the study that they did in LA found that 20% of the trees are in 5 census blocks where 1% of the population resides, which was pretty stark to me. And that also that the sun, the shade coming from the trees does actually like affect the climate of the neighborhood. They studied like 100-something cities, and on average, the blocks that were rated poorly during redlining as less favorable were on average 5 degrees hotter than the blocks that were rated as favorable from redlining.
What I'm curious about, how, like when they do these studies, is anybody surprised by this? Like when I was in 10th grade. No, I was in 11th grade because I was driving, and my friend Dana, she was dating my man Dave that lived around me. She lived over in North, and we took her home. We brought her up around this way. She was like, "Yo, y'all got mad trees around here." Like, was astounded just by the amount of trees in my neighborhood. My neighborhood's got a lot of trees. You know what I'm saying? And then we went out to Montgomeryville, out in the burbs. She's like, "Yo, I've never seen this many trees in my life. Like, what's going on here? Like, this ain't new." It fascinates me that somebody had to put money into that shit. Like, they you could have called 10 random ass broke niggas and be like, "Hey, how many trees are on your block?" And they'd be like, "1."
That's maybe what they did.
Well, the thing is that it's important. It's important.
Oh, no doubt. It's important to have that. You got to have that out there. But I get fascinated when it blows people's minds. They're like, "Oh my God, is that?"
All right, in the comments,
it's
in the
not
comments,
coming out.
let's see. Like, are you surprised? Anybody, raise your hand. Shout it out.
I will say that I was a little bit just because that is an aspect that I just had not thought much about. Right, I always thought about like the economics of it, but just these various just like details of living.
Yeah, I did. I noticed it when coming up. It's like I for the first half of my childhood or so, I was in the projects of Pensacola. But like, people think Florida, they think, lush, green, everything, right? But the areas that were deemed low-income housing areas in Pensacola were often deliberately neglected, like set up so that they would not have anything grow there. So like where the soil would normally be rich and lush and things would grow, they replaced the topsoil with things like shells, like seashells and oyster shells so that nothing would grow,
Wow.
like intentionally.
That's thugged out.
They also tend to place those things right outside the city limits, but inside the county, so that you'd be exempt from city services. Yeah, it's weird.
That's a mess.
It's weird and shady. There were lawsuits and settlements and things.
Yeah.
Which is why I'm so obsessed with growing plant life all the time. I'm always gardening and growing stuff and making sure everything around it is green. I noticed how much better life was when we had green stuff around us.
Aw, you're getting hearts for that one. Thank you, Show Love 100.
Plant
And
life. Everybody needs some trees.
and welcome Challenge God, who's now following us on Twitch. Very happy to have you here as well.
Plant.
We got an interesting comment on the Twitch from Curvy Red Girl about places in Michigan where white supremacists were using the trees in the neighborhood to burn down the homes of Black Americans. So many neighborhoods stopped planting trees. Because, like another way you might end up with some neighborhoods having less tree coverage and shade.
Yeah, which, by the way, probably was the intended end of that. It was like, okay, let's make sure they don't have trees. So we intimidate them out of having.
You're just gonna not act. Like, I feel like you got too much time on your hands. And you're like, you know what? Y'all don't deserve trees. No trees for you.
Some people just get really into their hobbies.
Yeah, really.
That is a bit of a
I mean,
mustache.
if the point where if you've gotten to the point to where you're getting to where your obsession involves you sewing an outfit, you've already got too much time where you.
All right.
Yeah.
You're right. You're right.
When your hatred escalates to the point of arts and crafts.
Yeah.
It's like, okay.
You're so mad you cosplaying shit. All right, you're right. You're right.
It's like, yeah, let's be ghosts. No, what?
I tell you guys, the other thing I was thinking about today, it's also kind of a like, yeah, I mean, somewhere in the back of my mind, I kind of knew this, but thinking about the specifics of it, like as a, you know, the fullness of it is just is just kind of mind blowing as well. Is I was reading about the food in prisons and how currently it's still so it's like not nutritionally sufficient for folks. In particular ways, it's got a lot of carbohydrates, it's got a lot of salt, so that diabetes and hypertension are occurring a lot more frequently from prisons, plus just malnourishment. So when you put that together with the knowledge that, you know, the 13th Amendment basically incorporated slavery into the prison system, Black people are way overrepresented, certain, you know, neighborhoods are overrepresented because of poverty, and you're just thinking about these communities that are basically in prison and just becoming like malnourished as a group, and the recidivism that is must be exacerbated by this, or, you know, coming out of prison basically a different person because of the nutritional and psychological effects that you're going to go through from just chronic malnourishment. Like there's a lot there.
Yeah, there is. I mean, you're getting malnourished in literally every way. It's not surprising you'd be, you know, nutritionally malnourished if prison is bad for you. I mean, you know, you look at like confinement, you know.
It changes more than your physiology. It changes your brain chemistry.
Yeah.
You know, but these again, I guess it brings back to like what our son was saying. It's like this is a thing we all knew. It's just it needs the scholastic documentation in order to change the minds of the people who don't believe that it's true.
Right. And in general, the prison food is being contracted out to vendors, which are, you know, private companies. And so for them, the game is to spend as little money on the food as possible in order to maximize profits. So whatever the cheapest way of delivering, you know, a certain amount of calories is the name of the game. So you get that a very minimal amount of food there. But the fact that that's going on and we have to talk about it, it kind of reflects, I think, part of it is the way a lot of times people don't see incarcerated people as worthy of care, and these are folks that are going to be coming home and being part of the community.
And remember, not everybody that's in there deserves to be there.
Absolutely.
What's up, John Jaramillo?
Yeah, hey John, and hey Brandy. We have Brandy Waller-Pace here, the founder and executive director of Decolonizing the Music Room, and a fantastic, if I may say so, as I have witnessed many times, musician. Welcome, Brandy. It's so good to see you. Oh, you're muted. That's cool. Hi.
I've been teaching on Zoom all year and I still do this. Nice to see you again. Nice to meet you all for the first time outside of the wonderful music videos.
Yeah.
Wow,
Great to have you here.
I'm so surprised. I'm actually surprised y'all haven't crossed paths before. I honestly just sort of assumed that you had. So I'm so happy to be bringing the amazing Brandy with the amazing Gangstagrass. This is so terrific.
I think it should be a natural pairing, definitely.
Right.
Is our son frozen? Oh no. Okay, that's just. I thought you were just kind of frozen. You just had the same technology.
This is not me trying to be cool or nothing. This is just me trying to make sure my sciatica don't hurt. That's all. That's all that is.
Remind me to bring my tennis ball for you.
I'm in.
So Brandy, you just popped in as we were discussing mass incarceration, which is a place we actually got from the lack of trees in neighborhoods also affected by redlining, and it was quite a whole.
There's some issues here.
Yeah. I kind of wanted to start light with you.
Yeah, but Renz was listening to Brian Lara this morning, and they were doing a best of episode, and they hit him with all the topics. Just
they hit me with some good stuff.
Yeah. Usually around this time we'd be talking about something goofy.
But absolutely, start the conversation with Brandy with with some, hey, how are you? What's going on? Tell us what's good these days.
I feel like in the pandemic, how are you was like a really loaded question.
I'm inclined
First, I gotta give you props for that shirt.
Oh, thank you. It's from Sister Sci-Fi.
Yeah, it looks like my bookshelf.
Yes.
Looks like my wife's bookshelf too. My wife is an avid sci-fi reader and writer, so I'm very into all those authors.
Yeah, wait, can you show us that shirt one more time, Brandy?
Oh, totally.
Thank you.
And actually, for people who don't know some of these authors,
N.K. Jemisin is just so amazing. Oh my gosh.
And Octavia Butler's the OG, and Nadia Okorafor is like my favorite modern Black speculative fiction, African futurist, all those things.
Speaking of books, what are you reading right now?
Oh my gosh, what am I reading right now? So I'm in a PhD program. So I'm doing a lot of reading that I would enjoy a lot if it wasn't like a time thing, but I still like it. So right now, this is what I've been looking at. Black feminism in education and Black feminism and qualitative inquiry.
So I feel like these are both for the same class, or is there
yeah, so class? I've been taking a qualitative methods class, and we get to pick what we want our study to be on. So I'm looking at Black women educators and racial identity development and code switching from place to place and their own perceptions of their what about their behavior makes them identify as a Black woman, and how that changes whether they're in predominantly white environments or predominantly Black environments.
Got how to code switch. You ever see that?
Oh yeah.
There's
Amber Ruffins did this amazing skit where she was talking about how she forgot how to code switch at her jobs. She's been in the house. It's amazing. It's magnificent.
Everything she does is magnificent. I love her so much.
She's the absolute best.
Yeah.
Her and her sister. They put a book out together.
Oh, I need to check that out.
If I have a choice, of what late night show we go on, it's going to be Seth Meyers just because she's there. Just because Amber's there.
That would be awesome.
Calling the shots, pointing at the bleachers right now.
Right, all day.
Can I ask a question based off of those books? And I don't know if this is not fair to be so reductive, but like, is there kind of like a basic takeaway, something that either surprised you or might be helpful for people to hear about, particularly that second one, Black feminism in qualitative inquiry? Just like those two things coming together. Is there something unique about that?
I think so. In a lot of more general talk, there's a lot of talk about Blackness, but not the intersection of Blackness and womanhood. And I think that a lot of people underestimate just how racial and gender experiences shape. That's really general, but it's really common as well, right? Like when we say Black, we're generally not taking into account what womanhood means. And it means some really different stuff. Can we curse here?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Some different shit. Okay.
Personal. We're all about personal choice here.
Okay. But that's kind of the biggest takeaway is that so many people assume when you say Blackness, there's just Blackness, right? And there's Black womanhood, and there's like how many millions of ways to be a Black woman too.
Yeah.
Wow. How far along are you in your PhD program?
It's just year one. It's supposed to be a 3-year thing.
Oh, wow.
If you go really hard, but of course I'm running a nonprofit too. So I'm like, we'll see how long it takes.
So, and this is
8 years is when I get kicked out.
And they just write that into the whole thing. They must be really serious.
Yeah. So I think 8 to 10 years is average for a PhD program, I think. And then they're just like, you've been here too long. You need to go do something else.
So you're doing this PhD program. You're running Decolonizing the Music Room. Not just founded it, but really in it. And you're a teacher too. Talk with us about what it's like. Just even, we'll get into teaching music specifically, but even just being a teacher right now.
Yeah. So my timing was pretty serendipitous because I decided to quit teaching full time and go into my PhD program. And I had agreed to go, and then the pandemic hit like the next month. And so I finished that last semester as the first pandemic semester. And this past year, the only teaching I've had to do is I have a teaching fellowship. So I teach a couple of undergrad sections. It's like teachers who want to teach in elementary school, but are not related to music ed at all. So I teach them music things, like we play ukulele and play recorders and I make them create songs and stuff. It's very fun. And they get to share with me the stuff they're listening to. And I'm kind of a square, so that's where I learn about like modern things.
Oh. What have they brought to you that's intriguing that you might want to share with us?
There's a lot of modern hip hop, and I don't really know who exactly to listen to. So there's stuff where I'm like, I don't really know how to fish through this. And then they'll have something they like, and it's a really cool surprise. Or it'll be just like a totally different style of music. There was a Mexican style of music. I cannot remember the title of it, but very storytelling related.
Narco corridos.
There we go. That was it. And I had not known about it until we talked about that in class, and the kids, they're not kids. The students began to share different genres of music that they listen to.
I got 2 words for you. Foreign exchange. Foreign exchange. You're welcome.
Yes.
Yeah.
I've listened to not newer stuff of theirs, but I have a friend who did some stuff with them, and so
Ooh.
like do you know Lucina?
I know the name.
We went to college together, and she's amazing. I have a lot of amazing musician friends.
Yeah, she was on some of Zoe stuff, right?
And so sometimes I find stuff just because I'm like, what are the people I know doing right now? And it'll
This
be
is
something
jealousy
really
on
cool.
my face. This is jealousy face.
I mean, yeah, it's definitely good to have a break from all the young littles.
Yeah, except that my young littles in my house who are virtual all year long. So that was a thing. Actually, my middle child loves sleeves. They're like, they're buddies.
Sweet.
It is.
She's
so
gonna go
mutual.
be her assistant at BlurredCon when we can travel again.
I can't wait.
I wasn't implying of time away from the children. I meant young Lil.
Right, young Lil.
When we're talking about
etc.
the modern hip hop.
No, I love
It's
that you just
you
like.
can put young and then some word, young noun, Lil noun.
Teacher brain,
Yeah.
just go straight there.
Baby noun, noun baby.
Yeah.
Little baby.
Little baby.
Young baby.
Yeah. Have like as someone who also teaches, I'm wondering if you're having a similar experience. Do you find that you're doing more to compensate for the fact that you're not actually in the classroom with them?
My gosh, yes. Especially because we're supposed to do musical skills with a lag via Zoom. So there's just a lot of stuff. The cool thing is that it makes you more creative, but it's like, y'all know Bettina Love, the scholar Bettina Love? She's this amazing Black feminist scholar. She works, I believe, at Georgia State. But anyway, she had an interview about all these things changing during the pandemic. And she was like, why don't y'all keep that same energy when schools come back? Like all these innovative things we've had to do by necessity for the majority.
Yeah.
So having to do that, I'm like, now that we're going to be back in person, I need to make sure to keep that energy because it's very different. What about you? What are some of the things that you've had to do?
Funny thing about it, like I teach technology. I teach development and programming and those type of things. So like what happens, I started building a system to better track the progress of my students before the pandemic happened. Mm-hmm. It just that now I had to add a whole lot of other features to the system in order to do distance learning.
Yeah.
And then utilizing a lot of other stuff. So, but it does. I found that it has it's with the virtual stuff, you can have one-on-one conversations with your students without them feeling like the pressure of being seen coming into your office.
Absolutely.
The students.
That makes sense.
But you can tell that it is having an effect on them not being with their classmates.
My students went through a lot. The reasons they would tell me they missed class were like heartbreaking. And the fact, like y'all were talking about prisons and stuff, like we do this like authoritarian thing where it's like kids go through grade school having to have permission to be humans, like to use the restroom and like move their bodies around and all this stuff. So then they get to me and they're like, I'm so sorry I missed class. And then they say some like super devastating thing. And I'm like, that is not apology worthy. Just like you missed it. Like that was totally valid.
I'm reading, as you're talking about this, I'm reading a little bit about Bettina Love since you mentioned her. And it mentions this abolitionist teaching practice, which I guess, okay, there we go.
I have a hutch, so
I bet
it's easily accessible.
Can you turn do you want to turn the camera around, or do you just want to pull them out one by one?
I can turn the camera and let y'all just read my stuff.
That would be really.
I'm just gonna make y'all like, what book is she gonna pull out next?
Yeah,
we're big fans of books here.
But
this thing is so dope.
No, I was gonna.
Y'all can't see the thing. There we go.
Behind you.
As you're mentioning it though, right? So
add that to the list.
I guess it's just it says teaching that focuses on restoring humanity for children in schools, and yeah, you're talking about the sort of authoritarian thing that then just gets like, I don't know, automatically stripped away when you hit year one of college, or at some point you just
supposedly
say, no, you're an adult. Yeah, you're an adult now. So, but yeah, supposedly, yeah, that's a fascinating.
Then professors expect critical thought, a certain level of engagement when we've done this to children the entire time until they get there. Bettina Love talks about the place of white supremacy and anti-blackness and all this stuff in education, and the important idea that when people hear abolish, they think just like destroy, right? But part of abolition is what are you going to build up to replace it, and people don't often think about that part. And people say abolish the police doesn't mean wipe everything away and nothing's there. People really do have workable solutions. They're very drastic solutions, but they're functional.
One thing that bothered me when I was in school is that the students have no power. and yet you have elections, and like for student body president who can't actually like accomplish anything for you. And what is that? Like, what is that teaching you? And how are you supposed to like, you know? And then you like graduate from high school, and now you're actually voting. Like, what did you learn about voting except that, like, it's a popularity contest and you have no power?
Wow.
Yeah, it prepares you for those cynical feelings of powerlessness. Yeah.
I want to hear if there's any of the instruments behind you that you'd like to introduce us to.
Oh, let's see. There's actually a whole rack of other ones off screen. So
Of course, there's a whole rack. Of course.
let's see. Y'all can meet my favorite banjo, I guess.
Yes.
Yes, please.
Yes.
We would
Sorry.
like that.
I mean, sure.
Oh,
That would
boy.
be fine.
Well, we'd also be happy to meet your second favorite banjo. I mean, we're not going to be picky about the banjos.
I
We'd
could
love to
probably
meet
go
the
down to like
fan.
my fourth or fifth favorite banjo based on what I'm looking at in the room.
Oh my gosh.
I have a lot of instruments.
Dan, wipe your mouth. Wipe your mouth.
Sorry.
So warning, this is not in tune at all. So we're just visually meeting this friend.
It is a banjo.
'Cause I've tuned nothing. This is a Pisca banjo,
Mm.
and this is a slightly earlier Pisca. So Rachel Eddy, who is an amazing musician. Rachel and her wife Emily, I met at Augusta Heritage Center, and I saw them again at Clifftop that same year. And Emily had this banjo. Rachel had, and she liked the setup so much, they had couples banjos, the cutest thing ever. They have like rainbow couples banjo cases. They're like the most wonderful people ever. So anyway, Emily let me play this, and by the end of the festival, she let me buy it from her.
Oh, that's
It's
fantastic.
warm and loud and just so spectacular. And because it's an earlier, like slightly earlier version from the maker, it's just got like a different spirit to it than the later stuff.
So
Yeah.
do you give your instruments names?
I don't name my instruments because I'm too forgetful to remember what I named them.
That's a
So
great.
all I do is just describe them.
That's a great story and a great provenance, and yeah, I feel like that's true of a lot of banjo makers, that like the early work ends up having just a uniqueness to it that then sort of gets, I don't know, smoothed out with the later ones or something. Yeah,
And when they
Piscas are
have to
great.
make so much more,
Mhm.
and they
Right.
have to be more efficient,
That makes a lot
it
of
shifts
sense.
a little bit.
Yeah. Oh, Rachel's great. I know her from her work with the early Mays. I don't think I've ever met Emily, but yeah.
They're both
Rachel's-
just lovely, lovely humans and great musicians. They did a virtual jam throughout the pandemic because Emily plays banjo, but she plays bass too. And so they would like announce the key and then have the virtual banjo for the virtual jam for the night in whatever key.
That's so great.
Because they're sweet. And it was really fun to have an option to engage in tunes. And yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, if I seem a little distracted, it's just because I just bought that Patina notebook.
Wait,
Yeah.
what?
And the
Oh, good.
the education one, where'd it go? This is one. She's one of the editors, and she edited with Venus E. Evans, who wrote the other one.
I'm typing these names down now.
Yeah, I feel like we're obligated to, make a Twitter post or something where we share the resources from this
Yeah.
stream.
Of course.
I'm just like anything related. I'm
Of
just
course,
like, y'all
yes.
check it out.
Yeah.
Buy anything by Bell Hoods. Anything.
Yeah.
Books for sure.
Anything that she writes. Okay, I'm gonna stop pulling books out.
I don't really think we mind. I mean,
Just
we
for now, just
could
pause.
actually do
We'll come
this the
back
whole
to it.
time. And seriously, I think it would be great to get some of this on the Twitter. So, follow at Gangstagrass on the Twitter or the Instagram. We'll find a way to get this up there. And Brandy, you want to share your social links as well while we're talking about it, so people can get the book recommendations directly from you.
Yeah, you can find me on Insta at Brandy Pace Music, Brandy with an I. I guess it's written on the thing. And at decolonizingthemusicroom.com, you can find what the whole nonprofit's doing. I wish I had my fiction books here too, but this is all just like work. And I have like a fiction shelf with like my Tolkien section and my Alice Walker section and my like all my stuff.
Well, we'll have to make do with the shirt then, I guess.
But y'all on Instagram at Sister Sci-Fi, SISTAH, I think. they're a bookshop. I can't remember where in the Pacific Northwest, and they just have really cool merch and events, and they're just lovely.
That sounds really good. Do you have like a fiction book or two that you just keep going back to and read over and over again?
Yes. My top 2 books are Alice Walker's The Temple of My Familiar.
Oh my gosh. I was actually thinking that in my head.
That's like, I can read over and over and over. And sometimes I just cycle back through her fiction. I actually hadn't even gotten interested in reading her prose till lately because her fiction's so rich and meaty. And Medea Corafor's Who Fears Death is one of my favorites that I can read over and over again. And then I have like series. Since I have been doing more school stuff, I hadn't read as much, but I used to like reread like Lord of the Rings over and over again. And, some of those things I would cycle back through.
Can I ask you, are you a Ray Bradbury fan at all?
I read Ray Bradbury in like high school or middle school and haven't read anything since to remember any impressions of it.
Yeah, it's funny, I was having this conversation recently with somebody who's a big sci-fi person, just never really got into Bradbury for some reason, and I always like it. I feel like his characterizations are great. There's in particular the Martian Chronicles. He's I mean, certainly this is decades ago and everything, but there was one story in particular that's just it's like an exodus from a southern town, so sort of a largely black exodus. It's this idea, because the Martian Chronicles is a bunch of short stories around what happens when we go to Mars in a meaningful way, and at some point it's just it sort of trickles down to like the lower classes of people, and it was just this it's a fascinating story. I recommend that people read it and check it out, because I feel like it's Way in the Middle of the Air, if I remember correctly, I think is the title. And interestingly, I have at least 2 copies of the Martian Chronicles, and it's not in one of them. I think because of essentially sort of sensitive racial issues that it addresses and depicts.
Yeah.
No Negras in our science fiction.
Well, or like, certain words essentially. But it was really
like Ender's Game. They had to do some editing to Ender's Game.
Mm-hmm.
When I read Ender's Game, I knew like vaguely to watch out for the slurs and stuff, but I had a really old edition. I was like, what the fuck? So now I know what's actually in the book.
Right. I mean, that's editions, right? Because that's like stuff might be in there, but like maybe it got excised in between. I mean, it's really, I don't know. It's a fascinating thing. Is there? I guess maybe a better broad question would be: is there material, like I think you mentioned Tolkien, having like a Tolkien shelf? Is there like what's your favorite sci-fi from, I don't know, like 30, 40, 50 years ago? In terms of like what holds up, I guess.
What holds up? I don't know if that's a good question. Like, I remember the impression I've gotten. So I'm going to go ahead and give the disclaimer. If you read this book and you find something janky, I'm sorry.
Sure. Totally fair.
I do like C.S. Lewis's space trilogy. Actually, the first 2 books are what I have. I don't have That Hideous Planet. I think it's just the 3rd book, but I have Out of the Silent Planet, which happens on Earth, and then Paralandra happens on Venus or Mercury. But I really enjoy those books. And again, some old problematic stuff from authors. But I think those 2 are like hold up better than I love the Chronicles of Narnia, and the last book is like really problematic and does not age well at all. Yeah.
I've never read that.
Which one was that? That was what was the last one?
Hold on.
That's Silver Chair.
I was just about to say, not Silver Chair.
Silver Chair was like the 4th or 5th one.
I don't want to say Beyond the Sea, but this is a Bobby Darin song.
I do know the song. I know the
and
song.
now Finding Nemo is stuck in my head. Thank you. Thank you, Dave.
I'm sorry. Totally derailing here.
The Last Battle.
Last Battle, okay, yeah.
Yeah. there's some really cool allegory in it, but there's like literally fair skin and dark skin folks that get called a derogatory name and are presented as the non-believers, and it's real. It doesn't hold up well.
Mm.
Yeah, I never really got
Yeah.
into those.
This is all news to me. Although basically everything you've mentioned in the last couple of minutes I haven't read. I've heard of Ender's Game. I feel like that's pretty iconic, so that's surprising.
God, and the writer's so awful. I'm like, I don't even want to read it again.
Oh,
you know what I do love?
It was
is,
that Orson Scott Card, right?
Yeah, boy. Oh.
I did read So Long, Thanks for the Fish. What's the book?
Yeah, Douglas
Hitchhiker's
Adams.
Guide to the
Hitchhiker's
Galaxy.
Guide.
Yeah.
There
Douglas
we
Adams.
go.
Yeah, I felt
But
like
a warning, do not read that series back to back. You will be completely disoriented. One summer, I was like, I'm just going to read them all at the same time. And it was too much. You got to spread those books out.
I did that and I liked it, but then when I did it when I was older, they weren't as funny. Like I remember reading them when I was younger and just rolling, thinking it was so hilarious. And when I read it again, it's not that it didn't hold up. It just, I don't know, maybe it didn't pack the same punch the second time
Well,
around.
no, the thing is, one of the big parts about humor is surprise.
I suppose, but like there's
Yeah.
books from when I was a kid, like these Canadian books by an author called Gordon Corman. He did like This Can't Be Happening at McDonald Hall, and the last time I read that was, I don't know, a few years ago, and it was still funny after, a dozen times. Like, stuff can be funny over and over again. I mean, how many times have we watched Rick and Morty?
And maybe not the best example.
I
Maybe not
haven't
the best
seen
example.
Rick and Morty, y'all.
It's not always. It's
Rick and
okay.
Morty.
Look, if you watch it once, you'll probably enjoy it the first time, and you may or may not enjoy it the subsequent times. Like,
Yeah.
It's real. The like super violent and gross out humor, like in that vein, just doesn't really make me want to watch it. I don't have any problem with anyone else enjoying it, but it's just not as much my scene. It doesn't make me like. I can watch that's like like the dark violence a little bit, like if I'm watching anime or something, but like the gory humor and like all the throw up and people splitting apart is a lot.
That's interesting. Yeah,
They seem to have
part
been
of why I
going
don't
a
watch
bit
real
over the
movies.
top of the last couple seasons.
Yeah, like I don't really think of it that way, but you make a good point. There is, come to think of it, a lot of that. But I mean, that's like
Especially
live
this last
action.
season. It's quite gooey.
Yeah, but it starts that way. I mean, it's that way from the top. Like,
Yeah.
it is what it is.
Actually, I've been into the novelizations of the Red Dwarf series.
Red Dwarf. Yeah.
Very nerdy.
That's actually because and plus it goes past whatever they did with this actual series. Is actually pretty good.
I just finished watching Lovecraft Country because somebody slid me their HBO Max password.
I've been meaning to actually watch that, and now that I
think
do
it was
have,
so hot.
it's like because I read the novel,
Mhm.
and I haven't actually got a chance to see the series yet. I'm kind of
That shit is so hot, bro. It's so
I
hot.
heard it's so good. I'm so
It's
scared
dope.
though.
It's so you need to watch.
I'm gonna
it.
watch it,
It's
but I'm
super
scared.
duper
No,
dope.
I'm with you, Brandy. I
But if
want
you
to
get
watch
a chance,
it, but I
you
want
get
to
a
watch
chance,
it
I
with
would
people.
read the book first because the book is so
I
awesome.
do like the idea of it. Yeah, let me get on the internet some look.
You
quick.
gotta watch it because the way it looks, like the effects of you gotta watch it. Plus, there's some original art on there by Afua Richardson that's so bonkers dope. You gotta watch it. You're gonna be upset if you don't.
I'm definitely gonna check it out once I get through this PhD, maybe. All my bandwidth for reading is going there.
Exactly.
And so I
that's
just
why
like
you
veg
watch
out on
the
anime
show.
the rest of the time. Like,
I have
yeah,
to
I do
sneak
need
it
to
in.
watch
The
that.
shame Pharaoh's not on tonight because he would ask you, but I will ask you on behalf of him, what anime?
Yes. That is
So
what
first, I
Pharaoh
have to
asked.
ask if anyone recognizes my earrings before I answer that question.
Can
I
you
can't
hold
see
it
him.
a
Yeah,
little
can
bit
you,
closer?
come closer.
Is that like a
Nope.
Spirited Away?
It looks like a
No.
ticket from here to me. What is it?
They're from Demon Slayer. It's a more recent one that I like.
My
I
son
am
would
a big
recognize
Ghibli
that.
fan though. These
Ah.
are Tanjiro's
Oh, Lord.
earrings.
You just became my daughter's favorite person.
Demon Slayer?
Oh.
Yo,
I've got a
no,
little Totoro at my desk.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
I've got a little Ponyo at my desk.
Yeah, man.
Got a little Gigi from Kiki's Delivery Service.
Nice, good.
Got the baby turned into a mouse from Spirited Away.
Nice.
So are
we
you?
like plushies.
I'm always curious to see if anyone was like me who tried to recreate the food in those movies.
Oh my gosh, I tried the ramen and panyo and the ham.
Yeah.
I'm such a mediocre cook. I'm just not gonna do that anymore.
I mean,
but I do like watch video of the food over and over because it's so beautiful. And I love cooking anime, but not like Food Wars where it's like a lot of fan service where they just literally walk you through the recipes. So beautiful.
I mean, the extent of my panyo ramen, which I've done many a time, my wife will be the one that's just yelling ham like Panyo does.
I have a Panyo shirt that just says ham.
I want that shirt. I need that shirt in her size. But I mean, I literally just take like a block of Maruchan and make it regular and just like soft boil an egg and put a slice of ham on it. Like I don't do anything fancy.
I did the same thing, but I think that when I make food, my kids are obligated to act like they don't want it, even though they asked for it.
Oh no!
I think it's like a house rule I didn't make up myself.
That's terrible. You should show them the Panyo again and be like, "Did you not get? You're supposed to."
We gotta rewatch because we end up ordering out ramen here and there, and then we'll watch something. And my kids are 13, 11, 8, so they each have different tastes. So like my 13-year-old and I'm showing him One Punch Man because he hasn't seen it because I had to wait till I felt comfortable with him watching it.
Fair enough.
So go around trying to punch people.
It's just there's so many like guts and stuff. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
And then my 11-year-old loves slice of life like me, which is like just the cutesiest stuff. So we watch that together. Oh, and my oldest, I got him to watch Naruto with me. Right. And then my little one just doesn't like to read subtitles, so she gets mad.
What's the story with the one dude on One Punch Man, the black dude? How have we let this dude slide all this time? Like, his name may as well be Mandingo. Like,
he's not black.
But
which is the prop, like, it's really bad.
And I'm trying to figure out, we've let this dude, I don't even watch a lot of anime. I know that it exists and I've seen it, I mean, I sell it at my store, whatever. I sell a lot of the mangas and whatnot. But I saw this dude and I'm like, hold on a second. How have we let this Joker slide? Like, if it was in anything else, Black Twitter would be losing their mind about this dude.
You mean like in like Dragon Ball Z or something?
But they let this guy slide, and he's just this giant, dark, with the big lips and the eyes. He's got no clothes on, and
it's part of his
hey man,
power training like or something that he's really dark. The black nerd groups don't let it slide though. You gotta like talk to the black nerd people because we talk about all that stuff.
Listen, I ran a black nerd podcast. I was part of a black nerd podcast for 10 years in Philly. We essentially set it off here in Philadelphia called Black Dribbles. And my man Isaiah, he's a big anime dude, and he loves all that stuff. And he's the only cat that I know that was like, yeah, I can't mess with him just because of that. And I was like, how does this dude get by? How does this get by? And I need
oh my God! It was funny. I had to look it up because I actually didn't make it as far.
You see this ball now?
Yeah. Oh Lord.
Me neither.
It's a problem, and
I've never made his name may as well be Cooney McJenkins. Like it's the worst thing I've ever seen in my life, and cats just let it slide. Like no.
His name is Black Luster.
Wait, no. Super Alloy Dark Shine.
Dark Shine. I'm saying different names.
Yeah. You just let this ball slide.
Dark Shine is even more problematic.
Like, come on, man.
Dark Shine. And I don't do this. I don't do this with everything. But like if my kids ever witness any stuff like that, then we have to like sit down and like do the whole unpacking and everything. Because like you said, sometimes people just.
Now I'm gonna say that I personally, in my own, I don't really care. Like, whatever. But when when the cultural zeitgeist is that you have to be extraordinarily correcting your thinking and so on and so forth, blah, blah, blah. And if you do the slightest thing wrong, then the whole world is coming at you for it. Oh, except for this, because I like this. You know what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't feel right to me. You know?
I hear that.
I only talk to smart people about this stuff, because a lot of these ignorant fools out here, they be like, man, whatever, dog. One Punch Man is the shit. That's all that matters. All right, cool. But I need some insight, and that's why we have insight from people like yourself on to talk with us about this sort of thing, because I don't get it.
Yeah, I feel like there's a ridiculous amount of contradiction in so much stuff that doesn't justify it, but it shows why things show up in one place and not another. And when I consume stuff that's like that, then I just am vocal about it. And then sometimes I'm like, this is really contradictory, and I have to make it clear that that is what's going on, not something that's fine.
Thanks.
Sometimes I get there, and sometimes I just completely sweep it away.
And is it a question of like how contradictory it is, or is it a question of like what's the broader effect, or like I guess it's probably like situation to situation. Like right now, just not really gonna deal with it. But with this seems more of a serious endemic problem that like is such.
It definitely is.
Yeah.
It's definitely a thing. There's a lot of problematic stuff, and sometimes it's like, you get into whatever, and then you see something, you're like, oh shit, is that what I think it is? And then you have to like process backward.
Yeah.
From it.
Oh no. Yeah.
Right.
Like so Mr. Popo is this is from
Mr.
90s,
Popo.
right? And I don't know if like age has an effect, like if people aren't as into. I feel like people are still pretty into Dragon Ball Z.
So I have seen people like specifically like chunk together like essentially blackfacey looking characters in anime just to like problematize all that.
Yeah.
I've seen some chats that deal with that.
Yeah, I mean it's not just a problem in anime. It's animated characters in just about every country now.
Yeah.
It seems the Netherlands. Well, yeah. When I'm in,
I think it's just because
Mexico,
anime is like so everywhere.
Yeah.
First, not that it has more necessarily, but sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off about.
Yeah, but like in Latin America, you find it too. But what would have been like the stuff that would have been on products here in the United States that are no longer on products here because we've somewhat corrected some of that. That stuff is still highly prevalent in product logos and mascots and stuff down at just south of the border. And you kind of have to, I take it with a grain of salt because it seems to be more prevalent.
The confrontation where anti-blackness shows up is we're not better, but we have by necessity processed it differently just because of how racialization has worked and how incredibly separate some things have been, I think.
Yeah, and you see it's even more prevalent in places where you don't even really see black people. And
like
I feel like you can get away with it when you don't have to see a black dude in your face to correct that. It's like if it's like, I can do this because you're not gonna run into me and Randy.
I think I know one that you're thinking of.
Zwarte Piet.
Yeah, Zwarte Piet.
Yeah. Yep, definitely who I thought of first. Yep.
Usually I would be fielding questions and talking about the questions coming in on the chats, but mostly it consists of Brandy is awesome, which is not a question.
Who said that, kind person?
Well, we got Alexa Gold Music
people
in the Twitch chat.
Hey, what's up, Alexa?
Thanks, Boogie.
For example. So I'm just going to say, tell us about starting Decolonize the Music Room.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. So I taught in the Fort Worth Independent School District. Well, I taught in a nearby district for a year and a half, then went to Fort Worth and taught for 10 years. And I got to a point where I started doing music ed training, and it taught in predominantly racially minoritized settings. Started a couple of schools. One was almost completely black, and one was like half black, half Latina, predominantly African American and Mexican, but representation from other places as well. And then my oldest kid started kindergarten, 2 miles away, but the facility was like night and day. And there were things that were frustrating about my position that like did not exist at his school. He and my daughters go to a public Montessori program. Used to get in by lottery, but it's still part of the district. And it's in a heavily gentrifying neighborhood. So there's all these weird dynamics around it that we've been trying to work on. So I just got really angry, really angry. And I started doing committee work in the district, and I started on the racial equity committee. And at the same time, I was doing more studying music ed and like evaluating materials and talking with music teachers in real life and online. And there was just like a lot of super ignorant from like smaller microaggression to like flat out racism there. And it got to a point where it kind of reached critical mass. So like one thing that was happening was I was having interactions that were just, there was no way you could do anything but something big about these interactions. At the same time, there are things that I found effective in my classroom. And I was like, well, that's just one classroom, but what could I do to learn more and effective, multiple classrooms? So started doing some research and talking to some friends and getting some suggestions, because a couple of people were asking, this stuff you're writing, do you have a place where it all is? And one friend was finally like, I think it's time to start a site. So I gathered with a few friends and organized all of that, put some content out. I had a Facebook group that had just been dead for a couple of years, and I turned it into the Decolonize the Music group, Facebook group, and that began to grow. And then 6 or 7 months later, we became a nonprofit officially and started getting asked to present and started getting enough funding to really think ahead toward programming. So we were able to have our Fort Worth African American Music Festival this year and really get moving. But that's the short version of what led me there. Just necessity. Like, you just have to do more stuff. And I hate systems. I hate them so much. And when they squash you down and make you have to choose what you're going to say and do, like, forget that. I'll just do my own thing and find other people who are willing to connect and want to speak up and speak out and not have to worry about all the stuff that those stuck in deeply entrenched systems have to work with by necessity, because someone has to be there.
Right. And that's deeply entrenched over so much time. And, I'm really curious about how do you shift such a long-term tide of a particular storyline, a particular culture dominating this space?
And that's the hard part. So I think when we started, we as racially minoritized folks, I think we had too much attention on how to change the mindset of those who were white and within dominant groups in order to affect change. And now our mission is way more centered on the actual racially minoritized folks. Like, how do we create that space? How do we make sure that whatever the voices want to say, they can actually say? And how do we make sure that there is a light shown on people who've been doing similar work forever, where there just hasn't been like a strongly highlighted group that everyone can find? And for me, it's like a mixture of creating space so the voices can be there, because in these systems, just even being able to speak up in a regular way is not as common as it should be. And then just naming stuff that needs to be knocked down for me is really important. We talk to people who are still working in more traditional areas, but we always talk about, we're only doing so much if we're still fitting it within the same thing anyway. So we look for ways to be really, really disruptive and subversive, and to empower other people to understand that they also can disrupt and subvert, and that we have to speak up louder for those who don't have the luxury of stepping outside of the system or foregoing a salary or putting their jobs at risk or whatever it is,
I got one for you. Right here. I'm giving you this one.
Okay.
This you can have this. You know the show Little Einsteins?
Yes.
All right. So we take the whole concept, right? But instead of classical musicians, we do now jazz musicians and hip hop producers. And the artists that we do are all graffiti artists. And then you can call it like, I don't know, Carver Kids or something like that. That's yours. I'm giving you that.
That's
you
dope.
have the resources. That's you. Run with it.
So to piggyback off that, whoever's watching, that's a great idea. And you guys can donate at decolonizingmusicroom.com to get funding up so we can further implement programming and things like that, because that is extremely dope. And I know several people who will be able to get on board and make stuff like that happen.
I'm giving you that.
And if you're in the chat,
I watch that show with my kids all the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I watch it with all my kids. And, you know, it's cute and it's fun. But it was like all of the musicians were all classical musicians, right?
Western European classical stuff.
And all of the artists were like traditional European, except for what's the one semi-graffiti guy. He did all the pieces that MTV used to run all of his stuff.
Oh, that
Richard,
guy.
I know you know who I'm talking about.
Yeah. From
know
the
you know
90s.
who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Was it? No,
What's
not
his
Bosco.
style look like?
It was just
Like the kids, like outlines of kids and the primary colors and stuff.
Keith
like that.
Haring?
Yeah, I think that's yeah. And that was it. That was like, and I'm like, yo, yeah, I mean, those, you know,
Yeah.
I want to see Rainbow up on the joint, even though Rainbow wasn't a real person. You get what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
as for clarification,
Absolutely.
that's decolonizingthemusicroom.com.
Okay.
That's it.
Right.
We've got excellent contributors. We've got some written stuff. We've got some video. We have resources that lead to other really awesome creators and books and podcasts and videos. And then you can find out about us. We're a tiny team. We're a staff of 2. And then we have 2 contracted co-presenters who help us with content. And then everything else is volunteer folks. We have some kick-ass admins and mods on our Facebook group. And yeah.
And on Facebook, that's facebook.com/decolonizemusic.
That's a good question. I would just put in the search bar because I can't remember myself.
I've been sharing it in all the chats.
Oh, you're doing okay. Sorry. And don't do Twitter because I don't know how to do Twitter. I have to admit that I can't visually process Twitter, so I just don't do it.
Super
It's
fair.
okay.
One day we'll have a social media person who can do our Twitter.
There you go.
Boy, that's the dream, isn't it? So Brandy, jumping off of what this idea of disrupting and subverting, and this might be a tough question, but I imagine that you've given it some thought. So if anybody can answer it, it's you. If you were teaching about the thought process, if you were trying to teach people to become disruptors, to become subverters, and not in a outlandish way, but in this way that actually serves outlandish. Perhaps outlandish, serves to make change, not something that's just disrupting for disruption's sake or subverting for subversion's sake, but really aiming to make these kinds of changes. How, what would you advise people, or how would you teach them to get into this mindset and to have this kind of thought process? What does that look like?
Okay, so I have to scribble or else I won't remember things. We actually do talk about mindset a lot. So the first thing that jumped out with what you said is not disrupting for disrupting's sake. This makes me think, actually, I had to present this week and talked about it. And there's a Black woman, Black American descendant of enslaved folk, who was talking about like her own racial identity development and like her feelings of anger that she was trying to suppress. And I was like, actually, like sometimes the anger is supposed to happen. And I was talking about Audre Lorde's The Uses of Anger. I think the subtitle is Black Women Responding to Racism. Anyway, the point is there's a place for all the feelings, right? And with all this deep systemic stuff that we've seen, systemic and individual, so the first thing is to get white folks to understand that racially minoritized folks, sometimes they just get to disrupt because like sometimes we get to pour all this stuff out, right? Like we're not gonna come like punch you in the face or whatever. Like that's not the point. But it's like sometimes like the outpouring and the catharsis and whatever is just gonna happen, right? But then like our collective work, the biggest thing for that we try to emphasize for shifting mindset is first we need to have some sort of common language. But then one also needs to understand the necessity to be fluid in language and boxing and all those things that can happen when we try to compartmentalize stuff. And the like incredibly high level of questioning of every single thing that we have taken for granted. For me, like the questions make me shift my thinking and make me feel like I absolutely need to do something. So I feel like if we can mix that together with growing solidarity with people who are already really amped up to work, then those things can work together. But of course, we have to do it on all the levels at the same time. Is the, you know, the pre-K people and the K-12 people and the university people and the people out there in the field and the people who are taking care of the soon-to-be parents, and just like this big circular thing. But if we have language to describe what we're talking about, and we have that questioning, and we see that we're not alone, makes a big deal. And that's why it's so incredibly horrible that critical race theory is being used as a proxy for all the race things, because you know, it essentially is people trying to rob racially minoritized folks of the ability to publicly use the language from whatever framework it is to name what is happening and name what undergirds it and what needs to be done.
Right. Because if they prevent you from diagnosing the sickness, they prevent you from also providing treatment.
Mm-hmm. And you can look away and look away and look away.
Yep.
And to go back to fiction, 1984, if you don't have the language to describe something, or if you only have certain language to describe something, that is going to affect how people are thinking about it. This, and you know, we have a wide, diverse audience across the country, across the world. So it might actually be helpful, if you're open to doing it, to give your quick definition, you know, make sure that we're all linguistically in the same place as to what critical race theory actually is, perhaps versus what it's been said to be.
Okay, so what's the briefest way I talk about it? Because sometimes I'll talk about it in my presentations. Critical race theory came out of critical theory and legal studies, solidified, I'm trying to make sure I don't get the years wrong. The framework kind of got solidified around late 70s, early 80s. And basic idea of critical race theory is that racism that is experienced is not an anomaly. It's not just like individual people doing something here and there. It is systemic, and it is endemic, and it is something that is all around. We're swimming in that kind of stuff. And the landmark case that was analyzed in early writings of critical race theory was Brown versus Board of Education. And it analyzed what it did and didn't actually do for desegregation or integration, who it served, why the choices were made, and the impact over time. So one part of critical race theory that applies really easily to that case is this concept of interest convergence, which basically says like, whiteness will do what seems advantageous versus just out of the kindness of his heart, right? So we didn't desegregate schools because white folks were like, oh, you know, we really should be together. There was enough interest convergence. It seemed like there was enough in it for them. And again, I'm speaking in general systemic stuff, for it to be something that they would do. And part of that explains why it did not happen the way that a lot of people imagine it would happen. And there are all these other nuances about desegregation of schools that people tend not to consider. And even when I was younger, I didn't consider like what happened to Black educators, what happened. I thought very lightly of like the treatment of Black children when they got into schools. But Bell Hooks writes about when she went from a Black school to a white school, and like the love and belief and support just was gone. And all of those things. Anyway, so hope that helps. There's like tenets. There are tenets of critical race theory. And another thing it talks about a lot is counter story or counter narrative. And it's telling those narratives that are left out of these stories we tell ourselves about what America is, and these like racial mythologies that we have about who we are and how we came to be, that glosses over and obscures and erases a bunch of stuff. And that power of counter narrative puts the actual stories there from those who are living the experience. I always feel like I'm leaving something out, but it's along the line. And then Gloria Laston Billings is like the OG of taking it into the educational sphere. And still speaking and attending conferences all over the place. And she's just like super kick-ass and made some really humongous shifts along with other scholars and bringing it into what we do. And then music education tends to be kind of late as a field with a lot of the newer frameworks and stuff, but it's made it our way as well. We're just always a little bit behind processing these things and applying these things.
What are those shifts in understanding that have happened? And I mean, big question, don't have to answer inclusively, but and what still needs to happen, and of course in particular in music education?
Yeah. A really simple shift to name is around the idea of color blindness, which is shifting widely anyway. But I've had some educators, like somebody came and had heard us speak a year before and came a year after and talked about how they had trouble wrapping their heads around the idea that color blindness is bad. And because we have this like, what is the word? We don't want to see race and we don't want to see color, because if we were to actually see it, we would have to admit that there's been an established hierarchy based on it. So what do we do is, I don't care what color you are, and, I don't care if you're purple or orange or green. Nobody's purple, orange, or green.
Polka dotted people.
I want you to see that I'm Black, like I'm literally a darker color. And also we kind of slip into like some ableism in terminology when you start using actual disabilities euphemistically. So it's like a whole thing. But seeing shifts in people understanding that color blindness wasn't making them better, it was making them ignore stuff. And that seeing the color is very, very important, but it's destroying the hierarchy associated with it. That is more the issue. And if you see it, you can't help but see the hierarchy. And so then you have to do something about it, or you don't, and then you feel really shitty because you just sat there. But preferably, you're going to do something about it. Something that needs to change is that things are so heavily white-centered for, we know historical reasons. And like, we need our white peers to understand that what we're doing isn't about them. It can be with them, but it's not about them. It's about something bigger than that. And so the expectation that things should be tailored or catered or softened or whatever it is, just to make it more palatable or comfortable, that's just not going to happen. And to just imagine like your moment of discomfort that you get to go home from at the end of the session or whatever is like the tiniest fraction of the real life discomfort and lack of safety that racially minoritized folks, I'll say Black because I'm Black, so I'm gonna talk about Blackness. Black folks have.
Yeah, and it leaves everyone at a disadvantage to ignore it and pretend like it's not there.
Yeah, and teachers are really quick to say, I love my students, and then say, I don't see color. How you gonna love your student? You don't see the whole student. What does that even mean? What is love then?
Yeah, color blindness is basically erasure.
Are
Exactly.
there anything particular to like the music instruction or the way that the music room was being set up and utilized that you were looking at?
Yeah, music that's made its way into repertoire without the real history following, sometimes offensive music. This idea that because we're dealing with music globally and all of this stuff that we are somehow doing better because we're sprinkling our little multicultural stuff around. And then just the fact that like as a Black person in my field, it is not uncommon to see tons of presentations on my culture's music presented by white folks, not by Black folks. It is treated as a norm. And to look at music that gets published and written, very uncommon to see people, I'll say white folks because like the teaching field is predominantly white, very, very common to see those things being created and taught and profited off of by white folks with the other folks on the outside. And then like this, hierarchies like, Western European classical music is the art music and the good music. And then like hip hop is, treat it like it's not real music when takes a lot of skill to create hip hop world, like a lot of skill. It is
Honestly,
incredibly layered.
All I care about. That's been the only thing I've cared about for a very long time. And again, that's why the young Einsteins thing used to get to me. Like, hold on a second. Like, so are we saying that the only like smart music is European classical music and everything else?
Right, and that whole Mozart effect bullshit, like it's not even real. And the fact that like even when people talk about hip hop, sometimes they're using it to get the kids to do something that they can transfer to what they're calling the real music. Or they're not acknowledging that hip hop's a culture, not just a genre, and all of those things. And there's some great scholars who have been teaching about that, and we gotta look at that whole thing.
Say word.
One that we geeked out about a while back was Adam Neely's Music Theory and White Supremacy video. It's 45 minutes, but it's pretty great, I think.
I got to do a shout out to Philip Ewell, Ewell, who hold on, I got to find the name of it. Music Theory's White Racial Frame, and Making Music Theory Anti-Racist. Music Theory's White Racial Frame. Yep, absolutely, very, very kick-ass. And he's got some written stuff on his scholarship, and I'm actually gonna put the link in there. And some video that he's done as well. And there was this whole there's drama, but it's so niche, nobody knows about it outside. There's like a really big music theory and music education drama because he put that out. He published it in a journal, actually the Shankarian Journal of Music Theory Studies or whatever. And Shankarian was like a known racist. But people allowed his theory, and I'm not deeply trained in Western European classical theory, so I only know that part as an outsider. So then some scholars got together and wrote essentially all their problems with what Philip Ewell had wrote and published them in a journal without letting him know it was coming out, giving him an opportunity to respond without going through the usual peer review process. They just all wrote this thing and put it out, and it was a very, very big deal at the time. This was I want to say last fall or so, because I remember it was my first year, because my university is where the journal comes from.
Oh wow. That's fun.
From their music theory department. And and there's somebody, Lauren Kajikawa too. What is his thing called? Possessive and what is it called? A known racist.
Doubling up the playback.
Oh, sorry. I was like, the possessive investment in classical music, confronting legacies of white supremacy in U.S. schools and departments of music. Ooh, it's so good.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking into this.
Yeah, I'm looking at Music Theory and the White Racial Frame right now, which is awesome, but it is an academic paper, so it's got.
And the video is probably a little more palatable if you are not accustomed to reading papers written in that style, which is another frustration with academia. Is if you have to write that way to get published, but it's supposed to be for everybody outside of the school who's doing it.
Yeah, the Adam Neely video I was mentioning is actually just full of interviews with Ewell. So he's,
okay, I didn't finish it. I gotta finish the Adam Neely. I know how popular it was, but I didn't get to finish it.
And Neely's cool. He did a whole video just on the Scotch Snaps music figure that you find in rap in the last couple of years, and also in Scottish fiddle tune music.
I need to check out more of his stuff then.
Oh, he's good.
Yeah, it's fun to have it in a video where they can play you a clip. And make it more demonstrating.
That makes sense. Oh, he's a jazzer too. I'm Googling.
Yeah.
His bachelor's and master's are jazz related like mine.
So, wow, I feel like we've covered a lot of territory so far.
Yeah.
Is there anything, Danjo, you were trying to ask a question earlier. I'm not sure if you've had a chance to ask it.
Distracted by music theory. I'm so distracted by music theory.
That's why I asked you in this moment, because I know that music theory is a thing that absolutely Dan. I've personally been in a conversation with Dan about music theory that lasted for 7 hours. That's true.
Let's talk bossa nova.
I think my question was probably going to be, just sort of the nature of your work, of the work of the organization. How much is it focused on just like you're in a classroom, try to make it a little bit better right now where you are, in terms of like how much of it is the sort of building on Wrench's question, how much of it is practice, and how much of it is the curriculum and the syllabus, and how much of it is, mentality and approach? Is it all kind of knit together? Like you're going to look at the wrong material if you have the wrong approach. So it's both the material and the approach, and also just what you're doing in the moment. And maybe giving some more concrete examples here, because we talk about, historical figures being easily, broadly misunderstood and sort of whitewashed. But I mean, you could probably cite like any American children's folk song and look at like where, what like blackface minstrelsy vaudeville show did that come from?
Kinda yes, kinda no. So that's kind of the issue, right? Is that people get like very slippery slope with it. And they're like, then what can we do? And I'm like, the 50 million songs that are not that one we just said don't do. But you did bring up what we do, is that we talk about the mindset and how that allows you to make better choices. So one thing I do, I talk about the banjo, since I play it, and I talk about how it's coded white, but that we're learning the history of it more, but that everyone doesn't know it yet. And my own journey to the instrument and finding out about it, how cool it would have been as a little Black kid to be like, oh, I'm not just learning about the canon, right? Like my culture's creation is part of something that is so seen as so quintessentially American. And then I talk about like, and so my students and I would sing this fiddle tune, but now I know this and this and this. So now when I talk to my students about this, here's all this history that was obscured in the first place that now we get to talk about. And my kids get to see Black people playing the banjo, and they get to learn that background, and they get to learn that like there is that actual connection in the history of string band and early American music to Blackness. That, I took all my trainings and stuff and did some amazing folk stuff, but definitely didn't talk about folkness and Blackness in that part of music, or Appalachian Blackness or any of that stuff. Like it just was not standard in what we were doing. So those kinds of things, like we try to draw a through line. And when we're talking about your positionality, your identity, and how that will impact how you look at stuff, then we talk about our own and how that's impacted us. And we talk about things like sonic stereotypes, certain licks and stuff, and ways that music is created to sound like it's of whatever culture that it's not really based on it, or it's based in a really awful way. And so we'll talk about some things that have come up in repertoire that teachers have seen, and what the issue is around it. And then we try to make sure to balance it with like, what is something cool or joyful or whatever, because we don't want them to equate racial minoritization with just all struggle and bad stuff that we have to make sure to get rid of. But no, there's an article a colleague of mine wrote about, it was called Reclaiming Kumbaya. And she talked about the Gullah Geechee history of Kumbaya that isn't so broadly talked about, and all this cool stuff she learned about her history. Because a lot of the go-to is like, the songs are minstrel songs, we got to get rid of the racist stuff, and everything's bad. It's like, no. There's a lot of stuff out there. And we had something I interviewed about the blues, and the teacher does the blues project, and they're like, think of sad stuff. You got to think of sad, so that when you teach your students, you don't end up as the past for us was only sadness.
Mm-hmm. You just named a whole bunch of amazing sounding conversations that I want to like.
But specifically though, do you have a textbook for everything that you just talked about, specifically with teaching banjo? Because I feel like there are probably a number of, probably largely white banjo teachers, but also black banjo teachers that would really appreciate that kind of organized, just syllabus approach to everything that you've just listed, and that you've been doing it makes me wonder, like, if you don't have a textbook, I would be among the first to enthusiastically buy such a thing from you. The banjo is such an interesting instrument in particular, and I'm sure